Have you ever looked back at some of your old projects and thought to yourself, I am never doing that again, or at least I would do that a lot differently? I wanted to take today to look over the projects that I've done in the last year and rank them, the best projects to the worst projects. So don't worry, it's not all going to be negativity, but I will discuss why I've ranked some of these lower and what I might do differently if I took another shot at it. So let's head over to where I have everything kind of laid out and start ranking some projects that I've done. Are we ranking or roasting? I feel like we might be roasting some of them a little bit, but they are my projects and what I've done, so I think that's okay. Okay, so I have written all the different projects that I've worked on in the past year on note cards right here. I'm gonna choose them at random. We're gonna talk about them. I'm gonna rank them. So let's start with a random choice. Toy Weaver as the first one. So this is one of the vintage toys that I've enjoyed trying out over the past year and playing with. I didn't use the right materials and I ended up with something that I don't use very often, but I still think that the Weaver is a really cool concept and I wish that more things like that existed today for children. I think there's versions of it kind of. I still think it's cool. It was fun to work on. It wasn't like a top best or bottom worst, so I'm gonna put it right smack dab in the middle for now. What am I picking next? E-winder. So this is my e-ball winder. I know that you can buy electric ball winders online. They are, however, quite expensive, and I had just gotten a 3D printer, so I thought, why not try to make one myself, and especially a modular one that I could use both manually and with a motor. It ended up working, but it's not one that I can turn on and walk away. I think that it would either end up stopping because the bits kind of pop off if the tension gets too high, or I would get a tangle and then I'd be very sad because then my yarn is tangled and my yarn winder is tangled up in it. This is one that I'm glad that I did. I don't use it very often and I have some projects and ideas in mind in the future where an electric ball winder might be very, very useful. So I think that I might end up buying a dedicated and well-working electric ball winder rather than trying to design one myself. So this is another one where it's like, it's not the worst, but it's not great. So I'm actually gonna put it just below Toy Weaver for now. Next, I'm gonna talk about green sweater. What do you know? I'm wearing it. So this is one of the very few sweaters, I think potentially not the only one. I think like one of two sweaters I ended up hand knitting this entire last year in 2025. I love it. It's actually a reknit. I had started it, I made a mistake. I got too sad from making the mistake to unwind it and restart it. And I sat down and I actually reknit it this last year. But as I mentioned previously, 2025 was not a very easy year for me. And I have blocked out a lot of the memories of knitting this sweater. And I don't know that I want to necessarily revisit that yet. And so I think that's one of the reasons I don't tend to reach for this sweater. I think it's cute. I love the color. I love the details. I still haven't added the buttons. There's like a back neck opening to make it easier to put on. It's currently open because there's no buttons attached to it. So it's one of those where like, I love the sweater. I just don't reach for it because of the stuff associated with it. And it's a good sweater. It's just not a good time necessarily trying to remember that. So I'm gonna put it higher up above Toy Weaver, but I'm assuming that there's probably gonna be some things that go in between these two. It's just that for right now, that's kind of where that one sits. Did I knit it partially on the knitting machine, like partially by hand, partially on the knitting machine? Honestly, I don't. I need to rewatch that video to remember. I've just fully blocked that out. Hexipuff quilt. So this one isn't a project, well, it's a project I have been working on, but what happened last year is that I realized I needed help. I started this Hexipuff blanket idea from the beekeeper's quilt design and retro claws idea of creating Hexipuff flowers a few years ago. So this has been years in the making, this Hexipuff blanket, and I realized that if I wanted to actually make something of any substantial size, I was going to need some help. So you all were so generous with your time and your materials, and you sent me Hexipuffs to finish and stuff myself and sew together into my quilt and my blanket. In terms of what happened last year, where I got such amazing support, is top tier, way high top tier. You can't even see it. It's so high. Hold on, let me try to, there we go. just at the top. One thing with that is that with everything else going on, I haven't been super consistent in continuing to finish the quilt. It's been in spurts rather than consistently. And so it's been hard for me to think about sitting down and filming an update video because I just don't have that much to film and I tend to just steal moments here and there. But I had an idea that was inspired by this account, who's currently in the process of creating her own dress from flax that she's grown herself, which I think is so cool. And she gives weekly updates, and also from Claude, because she's been giving weekly updates on how she's been doing and what her projects have been. And I think that that might be a good way for me to kind of give you updates on where I'm going and also keep me a little bit more accountable and consistent. Look in all the places where you can watch short form content. I'll also link it for you down below to see how far I've gotten. Next, we're going to talk about the Pride and Prejudice sweater. I'm going to go right off the bat and say this is probably going to be quite low. We're going to put it at the lowest point so far. It's not that I don't like the design. I actually really like the design. Pride and Prejudice 2005 is my favorite movie of all time, and I love the costume design in it, and I like the idea and design that I had for the sweater. I just wish I would have hand knit it, or I would have knit the panels fully fashioned rather than cutting and sewing it together, because I ended up cutting corners in ways that impacted the final design, which means that I'm never going to reach for that sweater. I'm never going to wear it, and it didn't end up with the effect that I wanted. That might be something to revisit, but as it stands from what I did last year, yeah, pretty unhappy with that. I think that's probably very close to a least favorite project or a failure as I can get. Next, I'm going to talk about the unwinder or unraveler, and this is like the sweater unraveler version 2.0. I created one a few years back, but that was kind of like with whatever materials I had available and lying around, and version 2.0 was 3D printed with bits and pieces cut to actual size and strength and sturdiness, because I knew that I was going to be unraveling quite a few sweaters. And I've used it for quite a bit of yarn. Back on my pegboard back here, a lot of that yarn is actually unwound sweaters that I have been working on and using and repurposing, which I love. I don't use it as much anymore because I have bigger goals in mind for yarn recycling and sweater recycling. Doing them one by one, thread by thread, is a little intense. Where do I put this project? I think it's better than the e-winder, better than the toy weaver, but I still like the green sweater better than it. Next we have the toy knitter. This is another one of those vintage knitting tools or toys, and honestly this is one of my least favorite ones. The tool did work, but it doesn't knit. It kind of creates a weird version between crochet and knot binding, kind of, not really. There's so much about it that I think makes it harder rather than easier to craft. And I think it would be better to just either learn crocheting or knitting rather than a tool that doesn't really crochet and you call knitting. Can you tell it's like a little pet peeve of mine to call things not the right crafting term? You can't build on that skill quite as much as if you were to sit down and maybe learn crochet, and then that has a ton of resources and a ton of places that you can take that, versus kind of being restricted to what this particular looping tool can do. So I think that's definitely now bottom of the pile for me. Almost off the screen for you. That's how low it is. Sheep to scarf next. Oh, this one I have to rate really, really high. So last year was the first time that I turned a raw fleece into a scarf or shawl. I love the design. I used inspiration from the Holdremosa woman to design it. It isn't a copy of that at all. It's just like an inspiration for that. I dyed it with natural dyes and I accidentally got so many different beautiful colors. Just from that standpoint, something that I love, but it's also something I've worn constantly. I reach for it all the time. Last weekend I actually went camping and I wore it that whole trip. It is super washable. The colors have stayed color fast so far. I think it's something that I like. It's one of the most proud things that I have, and I love it because I can wear it and use it all the time. So that's, I'm gonna call that even with a Hexipuff quilt, because it's top tier for me. One of the best things. And I'm so excited every time I see it and use it. Weaving towels. Okay, so this talks about the project that I did to basically come back to crafting after my long break, because things got real tough and then I didn't really know how to come back to this channel without giving a long explanation, and I don't really want to go into every reason why I was gone. So this really meant a lot to me. It took a long time, but I'm so glad that I did. I ended up being able to use a lot of the towels as gifts. Yeah, this one was deeply meaningful to me. Super fun to use my loom, and every time I use my loom I learn more about it. I use some of the techniques that I learned in my weaving classes. Overall, this is a top tier project for me too. 100K blanket, that's actually right here. It lives mostly in the reading chair over there. I see it, I use it, I love it. I machine knit this blanket made out of 100,000 stitches to represent the 100,000 subscribers to get me my silver play button. I truly never thought that I would get here with this channel and with the topics that I cover because they are so niche. And so it just means a lot to me that I've been able to get there and even exceed it, and I'm excited to keep going. So this is another top one. Can I have a 3-way tie at the top? Okay, I'll put it just below. How's that? Because I think that these two are still quite meaningful, but the 100K blanket is not far away. So this is another favorite of mine. Needlepoint toys. So this is another one of those vintage toys that I had fun playing around with. This one is another one where the terminology isn't correct. It's not a needle pointing toy. It is a toy that does like a version kind of rug tufting, but the mechanism that it uses to do that is so cool. But you're also not really learning needlepoint, but it is still a really cool toy just because the gearing and the mechanism is pretty neat. So I'm gonna put it higher than both of these, but I don't think it's something that I'm going to use again, which kind of brings me to another point. I have a few of these toys that I have used but I'm not going to use again. I don't know what to do with them. I'd rather them go to a place where they might be used. So if you have any ideas, please do let me know. Speaking of which, so I think this might be the last one of these. This is the toy CSM. This might be one that I keep because I think this one's really, really cool and it works very well. And I think that that could be fun to use. So this is a circular sock machine, but it's made out of plastic from the 70s. I just think it's really neat that a robust sock machine or like knitting machine was made for kids specifically to use and play around on. I'm gonna put that right below the E winder. I think that one's really cool. I would love to get that one for Christmas when I was like 8. The 1780 loom and weaving my linen towels on that loom. This project and trip and class was such a meaningful experience to me. I feel incredibly lucky that I got to go and I got to experience that. I wove on a loom from the 1780s. I wove linen toweling, and I was surrounded by people who are just as deeply invested in like that nerdy weaving and weaving history side. Like I literally got to weave on a museum piece that is so cool, that had historical evidence of previous linen weaving on it from hundreds of years of use. Like I am just so deeply thankful that I got to go and I got to experience that and learn so much. I learned so many techniques that helped me in my weaving and helped me doing the weaving towels that brought me back after a long hiatus. So this one is, I mean, right up there. It might be a tie with a 100K blanket, but we're definitely going to keep it right there. I think back on that, I think as one of the biggest highlights of a very hard year. Next, surgery sweater. Okay, so this is a 1950s easy knit sweater that claimed to be able to be knit in a day that I, in my post wisdom tooth removal sedation haze, decided I had to do the day after I got my wisdom teeth out. I'm very thankful I felt good enough to do that at the time, but did I need to try to push myself so hard to do like a 24-hour sweater knit? The other thing about that sweater, like I love the design, I think it's really cute, but I'm tall and I have a long torso, so I'm 5'9". I need to add inches to most of my sweater knitting patterns because I just get midriff showing, which could be a look that you're going for, but I don't typically love that on my sweaters. I wish I wouldn't have pushed myself so hard after one of my surgeries from last year, and I wish I would have actually knit it to fit me. So it's probably down here. It's not the best, but it's also not the worst. We've got netting. So I actually sat down and I learned how to net from a Victorian manual. So I didn't use any video tutorials or anything. I just learned how to do netting from an antique, over 100-year-old book. And I managed to learn it. It was frustrating. I think there was a few moments where I had to like put it down, walk away and come back because I was a bit frustrated with it. But I also realized like I netted for that and I never netted again. It could be something that I break out in the future if I wanted to do like filet lace, because filet lace is stitching into a netted background. So I'm glad I learned it. I don't see it as something that I would sit down and just do for fun in the future. So what are the criteria on ranking these? I think it's just like how I feel about it, how I vibe with it, and my vibes right now, I think it goes above Toy Weaver, but below Unwinder. Very empirical, you know? Okay, this one, Sheep to Hat, is actually a compilation video, so it's not a project I did in 2025, so I might not actually talk about this one. I might put it away. It's also a sad one because that's the first thing that I ever made from a raw sheep's fleece. Like it's the other bit of the sheep's fleece from my scarf. And I don't know where it is. I have lost it. And I won't lie, I'm pretty sad about that. But the last one to consider is what I called the fixing socks. So this is a video that I thought of doing just because I was getting ready in the morning, I was getting dressed, I put my socks on, I walk across the room and I'm like, did I actually put socks on because my feet are cold? And I look down and I'm basically have worn through the toe and heel portion of my favorite sock. And so I thought, why not use some vintage and antique techniques and reknit the heel and the toe? And I did. I reknit the heel and the toe on one of the socks. The gauge is tiny. I don't know why I felt the need to kind of almost match the gauge of the original knitting. There are so many different ways that I could have done it. I got second sock syndrome badly with that. So I still haven't reknit the heel and toe on the second sock. So I haven't worn those socks. So that's a slight source of shame. So I like the fix. I haven't done it yet. I don't want to do the same thing that I did on the first sock. How much is going to bother me if my socks don't match? It's better than toy CSM, but it's kind of on the same wavelength as surgery sweater because I finished the surgery sweater, but I don't wear it. I didn't finish the socks and I wish I did. So, you know, here is my ranking. All the projects that I've decided to talk about that I looked at or tackled in 2025. I feel like it gives me a little bit of insight to the things that I've really enjoyed working on. It gives me some ideas and some thoughts for the year ahead. I have some really exciting projects that are coming up soon. I am working on an antique knitting machine and restoring that. I managed to grow my own flax and I'm still in the process of processing it. Thank you so much for deciding to spend some of your precious time with me. I always really appreciate it, and I hope to see you all again really soon for some of those other projects that I've been talking about. Bye. You know, it's interesting to see everything lined up here because I remember 2025 as like a year of absolute chaos where I didn't get anything done here. And I'm like, I have so many projects that it's actually like you can't see it on the camera. So it's nice to see that too. I appreciate seeing that perspective as well.